All right, welcome back, Powers on Sports Podcast. Do you have your bracket filled out yet? You better hurry because time is running out. You may have already missed it, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. You may have already missed tip off for your bracket, but I'm sure you got your bracket in with all the places you can do that. So, all right, we are going to give you a great breakdown of the tournament from head to toe, from east to west, north to south. We got two great analysts that are going to be able to give you some great insight on some teams you know a lot about and then some teams you may not know a lot about. We're going to bring in Bart Hyche, my co-host on the Press Box Radio Show, Monday through Fridays from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time, pressboxradio.com. Bart's based out of the state of Alabama. He's a former Final Four participant in 1996 Mississippi State Bulldogs. Welcome in, Mr. Hyche.
How you doing, gentlemen? Very honored to be with you this morning.
We appreciate it. And also, we're going to bring in our West Coast guy, our USA Today, USC Trojan Wire editor, Mr. Matt Zemek. He's our guy out in the West Coast. He's based out in Phoenix. He is going to give us some great insight on West Coast. We've got a lot of West Coast teams in the tournament. A lot of controversy about the Mountain West. Do they deserve as many teams as they got? All that and such. We're going to get a little coaching. We're going to get a couple of coaching opinions about some vacancies around the country. So welcome in, Mr. Zemek. Appreciate you getting up bright and early for us.
Yep, now that Arizona's on Pacific time, and of course the Final Four is going to be here in a few weeks, so we're waiting for you.
All right, first question to you, Matt Zemek. Why will this year be any different for Arizona as opposed to years past? Was this year 3 for Tommy Lloyd? Correct? Mm-hmm. We know they got beat early last year. They've had a reputation of getting beat when they've had really good teams. Arizona, a 2 seed. Why is this year going to be different for Arizona?
Because Long Beach State is not as good as Princeton. Like Arizona. Arizona probably will win its first round game, but I'm not seeing the Wildcats breaking that very burdensome Final Four drought. 2001, Minneapolis, Gilbert Arenas, Jason Gardner, Lauren Woods. That's the last time Arizona's been to the Final Four, and this program keeps knocking on the door. Got to the Elite Eight a number of times under Sean Miller, had that 2017 team, which crashed out to Xavier in the Sweet 16. We never got that Arizona-Gonzaga Elite Eight game we were hoping for 7 years ago. And of course, 7 years ago, the Final Four was in Glendale, as it is this year. And Arizona was hoping to host and couldn't get there. And then last year, of course, the crushing loss to Princeton. I'm not seeing anything substantially different. I mean, Arizona's a good team, but I wouldn't call Arizona an elite team. This team got swept by Washington State, home and away, got bombed by Stanford, gave up 100 points to Stanford in Palo Alto, and actually struggled with Stanford in the other game at home in Tucson. This is just a mercurial, volatile, up and down team. And you look at Arizona's games. If you've studied Arizona at all this season, if Caleb Love and also Boswell, if one of those two guys struggle, this team struggles. It's way too dependent on Love and Boswell. If they're not clicking, this team's really in trouble. Oumar Ballo, he is good, tough, hardworking player, but he's a disaster at the foul line. So if a game is close, it's going to be hack a Ballo. They send him to the free throw line. He's going to miss a pile of free throws most likely, and Arizona is going to be in trouble. So I'm not seeing it. And if you were to tell me, Matt, Arizona or North Carolina in that West region, North Carolina all the way. And people will say, wait, North Carolina looked awful against North Carolina State. Well, it did, but hard to see Cormac Ryan playing as poorly again as he did against NC State. He was atrocious. You would think that there's going to be some balancing out there. I think North Carolina is not as dependent. RJ Davis is the straw that stirs the drink for North Carolina, but you have Baycott, you have Cormac Ryan, you have other guys who can step in. I don't think North Carolina is as dependent on one player as Arizona is on Caleb Love. We're talking about West Coast teams. Oregon's in the NCAA tournament as the automatic bid holder in the Pac-12 because Arizona got a 14-point lead on Oregon. You're thinking that game's over. Like Arizona probably like on live sports betting was probably like a live 21-point in-game favorite when it got that 30-16 lead. How does Arizona squander a lead against an Oregon team that it beat like a drum twice in the regular season? And just like Arizona plays with its food. And so I am not convinced at all that the Wildcats are ready to break this Final Four drought.
Give me a quick thought, and I'll come to you, Bart Hyche, just a second. Give me a quick thought on Gonzaga, St. Mary's, both kind of a 5-6 seed. Both have dangerous first-round games. You got St. Mary's in Grand Canyon. So if you don't know about Grand Canyon, that's where Bryce Drew is coaching, the former Valpo and Vandy coach. Give me a quick thought on the St. Mary's Gonzaga run this year. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, so, I can't believe the Zags were seeded 5th when they didn't even win the West Coast Conference tournament. I mean, that's a wild overseed. Committee just basically threw the dart like, oh, Gonzaga, they must be really good. Like they just went into the brand name rabbit hole and somehow came up with a 5 seed. So like Gonzaga, McNeese, like that to me, that is close to a 50-50 game. Like McNeese is excellent. Will Wade, not a guy you want to face in the NCAA tournament. So like that definitely has 12-5 upset potential. You could easily say that should be like a 10-7 game instead of a 12-5 game. And then St. Mary's, Grand Canyon's good, but I follow Grand Canyon obviously here in Phoenix.
Yep.
If you looked at a lot of Grand Canyon's games, Grand Canyon starts slowly. Grand Canyon's been an amazing last 5 minutes of the game team. If Grand Canyon can get this to the last 5 minutes, could definitely win. But will it get there? Like, and you do not want to fall behind 10-0, or 9-2 at the very start against St. Mary's, because then you're fighting uphill against a Randy Bennett defense. So you don't want to do that. So I think that matchup plays into St. Mary's hands. And I think St. Mary's has a really good chance to get to the Sweet 16.
Let's move to the East a little bit, Bart. Give me a thought or two about the SEC. Obviously, had Auburn had the great run to win the title. They beat a Florida team who's really, a lot of people think they can win some games. Give me a thought or two about the SEC, the ACC, the ACC obviously had NC State make that miracle run to win that tournament. Clemson, a lot of people think they got overseeded a little bit. Give me a couple thoughts from some of the teams on the East Coast.
First of all, shout out to our West Coast guy, Matt Zemek, for the Arizona playing with its food. That is about as accurate of that team as I think you'll see. I mean, it's like you want it to be this, you want it to be that. But then sometimes when you think it's that, all of a sudden NC State beats North Carolina. But so you have to go to the substance of the whole year, and I think realize what these teams do well that translates to winning tournament games, right? Who's got to score? Tennessee. Who can score? Kentucky, Alabama. Okay, those type teams. Who can defend as well? Auburn, Mississippi State,
right?
Florida. But who can play both ways, right? Who can score? Who's close to the top 20 in all the nice categories that I don't get into all of it. We don't have all that technology in Alabama like y'all do down in Florida and over in Phoenix and out west. So, but guys, I like Florida. Now, I think the injury to Hallington hurts. I think he's a huge key piece, especially defensively and on the perimeter, because he's their best ball screener. And those guys like to come off and shoot threes, but his angles will be taken away, and that'll hurt Florida. I think Florida could go to Final Eight, man. I just don't see a lot of resistance where they are. I don't trust Tennessee, though. I think they got the score and connect that they haven't had. I don't trust Rick Barnes in this setting, and I just haven't until it's just one of those prove it to me things. Just like I don't trust Purdue either. I love the teams, but in tournament games, you got to make free throws. You got to have a guy who can go get a bucket. You can't turn it over, and you got to get timely rebounds. And I think Florida can do that. That Auburn team is dangerous the way they play, man. They frustrate you. They go 10 deep. They can get up and down, and they can play slow as well. But South Carolina is that team I said all year that they're going to end up probably losing to a good team in the tournament. I thought that the Florida, Auburn, South Carolina winner would go to the final to play Florida in that SEC tournament. Shows you the parity of the SEC. Guys, I really think that Florida and Auburn, I can't trust Kentucky and I can't trust Alabama because they can't guard the rim. And that's the other biggest thing. This new charge rule we talk about all the time, Powers, how it impacts scores staying on the floor and being able to protect the rim. It's twofold. And so I think in that setting, the two teams in the SEC I would trust the most, and I'm not buying A&M. I like the style. I like the story. I think they could win a game or two, but Houston's in that bracket. So Auburn and Florida are really the two teams that I could see maybe extending their runs later than anybody else.
From a player's perspective, obviously you played in this tournament. Talk about because again, you've seen a big jump in scoring this year in tempo in the SEC, for example. A lot more points being scored. These tournament games tend to slow down a little bit. You're not going to have these games in the high 80s for the most part. So you'll get a few, but a lot of these games will be in the high 60s, low 70s. Talk about the adjustment some of these teams have to make, the Kentuckys, the Alabamas, the Floridas, where they're not going to be able to score probably 85 to 90 most nights. To about that and the officiating. You're going to be seeing different sets of officials, different conferences, call it different ways, not as physical in some leagues. Other leagues let them play more. Just talk about those two variations that you're going to see in the NCAA tournament.
Wow, that's a really, really good NCAA tournament question, Powers, because you see so many different styles, so many different things. Well, if you ask, we've had numerous people on our show: Bucky McMillan, Will Wade, Chris Jans, Pat Kelsey, Bruce Pearl. All these different names come on and tell us they don't even practice taking charges anymore. Like really? How is that even possible that the charge has just been with one rule with making a guy get there before somebody jumps off 1 foot? And when I say the charge rule, I don't mean the push off. I mean the up in the air, going to finish, that type. It's changed it in the sense 85, 90 points a game, 3, 4, 5 teams in the SEC and other teams consistently getting close. What do I think it does in the tournament? I think it favors the teams like Charleston and Mississippi State, because I just think possessions will be limited. There's more of a fill-out setting in NCAA tournament games, especially early. That's why you see so many of the games start slower, like probably less points, because these teams don't know each other. They don't know what each other's going to do, right? And so you could have one team come out and jump out, and the other team kind of be, what's going on? And then we have to figure things out from here and there. The thing about these rules are, for a team like a Mississippi State that plays slow, right? You don't need to get down. You don't need to get down 10, 12, 14 points where you got to make up all these points. Those rules do not apply. They apply to a team like Alabama, who goes on runs and who can score a lot and with a lot of possessions. But it's about these bottom things: who makes shots, who gets stops, who rebounds the basketball. The rules are this, the rules are that. I think it'll slow down some, but the biggest point is the officiating, because just like in the SEC tournament, you saw in that Mississippi State and Tennessee game, that game was completely officiated differently in the second half than it was the first half. And you see that sometimes, the inconsistency of, oh, well, this team had 18 fouls and this team had 2. We're not going to call this foul. That ain't it, man.
And these crews are going to be made up of guys from different conferences. They're not all going to be SEC guys in the same crew.
Like the evening up of the foul, like a team like Auburn, okay? Auburn, it doesn't hurt Auburn if they get in foul trouble. They got 10, 11, 12 guys. Those teams like Mississippi State. I saw it in the Drake Mississippi State game last year, was an up-close example when Drake played Mississippi State in December out in Nebraska like a year ago. A very famous official was doing the game, and the State guys were all in foul trouble by the first half and had no idea what was going on. And Drake ended up coming back and winning that game. Not taking anything away from Drake, but to your point, Powers, when the officials hadn't seen the teams, but more importantly, when the players haven't seen the officials, they don't know how to play. So those adjustments that coaches can make, assistant coaches, pulling kids behind the side and say, hey, man, he ain't going to call that. Make sure you do it this way. Or teammates, same thing. Those are the little bitty idiosyncrasies of the tournament that will be important. And so fans need to look for those, man. See if you can catch those.
All right, Matt Zemek. A lot of chatter about the Mountain West getting 6 teams in, the Big East only getting 3. Give me the argument of why the Mountain West was deserving of 6.
Well, so the Mountain West had really good teams cannibalizing each other, and it was a study in, bid maximization, right? That the teams traded their wins in such a way that everyone's boat was lifted.
Bro,
And the thing, and the Mountain West teams were underseeded. Like, there's no way Boise State should be playing in Dayton in the first four. Absolutely ridiculous. But if you're comparing the Mountain West to the Big East, like, much rather be way underseeded and in than not even in at all. So, like, that's two different worlds in terms of the Mountain West and the Big East. So, and with Boise State's never won an NCAA tournament game. I believe 0-9 is the all-time mark. So Boise State gets a chance to play Colorado and get that first elusive NCAA tournament win. I know this next team is not a Mountain West team, but Nebraska. Let's just remember this about
yes.
Nebraska: the only Power Five conference program without an NCAA tournament win. So that's what Nebraska is playing for against Texas A&M. So but with the Mountain West, these are good teams, but San Diego State went on the big run last year, and thank goodness, because the other Mountain West teams didn't do well.
Right.
This what the Mountain West needs this year in March Madness, 3 or 4 teams
To win a
winning
game. To
round
at least
game
win
and
a
getting
game.
multiple teams into
I
the
think they
Sweet
will.
16.
Yeah.
They might. Yes, they might. I'm just saying that's the goal. Like, you want to get you have several teams in the tournament. Now you need several teams to win, because in past years, usually the Mountain West has not done very well. San Diego State was the exception that proved the rule last year. You want to get several teams advancing in the bracket, and the Mountain West has struggled to do that recently.
I know a team you like a lot. Give me a thought on Colorado. They've kind of made a late surge in the regular season. They made it all the way to the conference final. I know that's a team you've been pretty high on most of the year. Got some couple NBA guys. Give me a thought or two about Colorado.
Well, so got hot at the right time, and Tad Boyle was able to just, before it was too late, he was able to bring that team together. Crucial road win at Oregon, crucial Pac-12 semifinal win against Washington State. So, yeah, there is high-end talent there. Eddie Lampkin, the transfer from TCU, Cody Williams, the freshman, KJ Simpson at guard, Tristan Da Silva. Like, there's a lot of pieces there, and this team did underachieve most of the way, but it all came together before it was too late. So, I would lean toward Boise State. I think Boise State's been a more consistent team, and that Boise State feels disrespected being sent to Dayton. So if you ask me right now about that first four game, I would lean to Boise State.
All right, Bart Hyche. I'm going to give you 3 or 4 teams, low, mid-major teams that I know you keep up with and know a little bit about, that I think could be a threat here in this tournament, can win 1, maybe even 2 games. Charleston against Alabama. You got James Madison, who I know you've covered in the Sun Belt a little bit. I know you've done some Sun Belt stuff. James Madison, Wisconsin. McNeese against Gonzaga, which we kind of mentioned a little bit, but McNeese. And then Samford, a guy you know really well, Bucky McMillan at Samford. Give me a thought or two about those 4 teams and what's going to make them very dangerous come this Thursday, Friday.
All right, I'll try to get them in the right order here.
Whatever order you want, you go. Whatever. I don't care.
Well, I'm going to start with who I think. I'll go who I think goes the furthest, if that makes sense. Okay, I love James Madison. I love Coach Byington, what he's done. I love Edwards and Bickerstaff, but they can play different ways. Like I said, I think that's a different deal here. And a lot of teams that you saw go through some of these leagues, and they were like, 8-1, 8-2, kind of hit a lull. And seeing the Sun Belt, there's a 4-game stretch people don't realize because of Mardi Gras and where these teams are located, that they have to play 4 road games in a row. Wow. Everybody has to do that. So everybody's stretch is literally a losing record, except I think maybe Arkansas State was the only one that didn't happen to. And it might not be right, but it's close. But James Madison went through their lull. Well, then there was a couple of upsets on the other side of the bracket in the Sun Belt. App State getting taken down, and then Arkansas State it was a magical run to even get to the tournament and get the bye, and just ran out of gas. Brian Hodgson, that's a big-time coach. He'll be on the come-up. But to the tournament teams, I love Coach Byington and what he's done. He will be a big-time coach if he wants to, but he thinks he can build it there. He thinks it can be a Gonzaga type school, or like Charleston believes the same thing. Bucky McMillan thinks the same thing at Sanford. So I like James Madison in the Sweet 16. I've already got them in my bracket, and they're my big 12 seed that I think goes to the Sweet 16. I think they will fall to Houston.
If Kansas is vulnerable from a health perspective, Dickinson and or McCullers miss part of that game, can Sanford be a threat to Kansas?
Sanford can beat them anyway. I mean, I remember when Bucky McMillan, I'm talking to him before he went to IMG with Mountain Brook High School, and he told me we're going down there and we're going to win. And there were 4 of the top players in the country on that IMG team, and he had Colby Jones and Trenton Watford. And those are 2 pretty good guys. But the way that Bucky's teams play, they're always going to be in game. For Sanford, he's got to make shots. Okorakor's got to just be the best player on the floor, but they got to take care of the basketball in the half court. Kansas's pressure in the half court when people come at Bill Self. When people come at Bill Self and question his teams, you saw what happened when who was it that went to Kansas this year? I don't remember who it was. There was just Houston, I think. It was just in conference or somebody maybe.
A boat race.
It just got destroyed because they couldn't pass the ball in the half court. The half court will be the biggest key to this game. Kansas, I think, can handle the pressure because Harris is a veteran point guard. The pressure, but late in that game, does Kansas get a little loose with the ball? And who's going to be the guy for Kansas? If that game's close, I think Bucky McMillan wins it. It could be a lot of people would take him to win the game outright. McNeese, I'm with Matt. If that line were like 1 or 2 point favorite McNeese, I wouldn't be surprised. McNeese has got a guy. Shada Wells can play, man. We had Will Wade on our show. I was talking about, man, you've coached here, you've coached there. You've done great. And just how does it keep happening? I mean, your coaching style, he said, well, it's a lot more to do with my recruiting style than it is my coaching style because our players are just better than everybody else in our league. Now, the man said that. And so that means he knows he's going out with he's always going to have players on the floor that are going to be able to go get theirs. And Gonzaga, to Matt's point, is just not the same team, the interior presence. They don't shoot the basketball as well, but they're not as good in transition as they've been. That's where Gonzaga's killed people. This team is not like that at all. Charleston's another mid-major that I think I almost trust them to beat Alabama because the tempo is so different. But I'll say this about Nate Oates. When back's been against the wall, this team has been really good in a lot of senses. But here's the deal, guys, in all these games. And who did I forget? Did I forget somebody?
No, you're good. That's it. Yep.
But here's the thing you got to realize about like the Alabamas, the Auburns, some of these teams in the SEC that step out and have won all these games, at their powerful home arena, and all these other teams in the country. These games are neutral. These games is not a home court advantage. You'll have some fans here and there and whatever, but man, those underdog crowds start pulling or the bigger crowds start pulling for the underdog. I think you're going to see some of the same. If you're picking your bracket though, guys, it's hard to pick a bunch of upsets. You got to pick the right ones. My advice and all that would just be don't go crazy picking all the 12, 13.
Right.
Pick you 1, pick you 2, and live with it, and then just roll on. But to me, I like matchups in the next round. Like McNeese literally could be my favorite to go to the Sweet 16. Is that crazy?
And McNeese would potentially have the winner of Kansas Sanford. So very doable. And then in the West, you got the Alabama Charleston winner versus St. Mary's Grand Canyon winner. So a little East-West, you got definitely some opportunity there.
And to Zemek's great point earlier about Arizona, I think Arizona's going in the second round no matter who wins that 7-10 game.
Wow.
Whether it's Nevada or Dayton. And I think Nevada is a team that everybody needs to pay. They may have the most underrated backcourt in Lucas and Blackshear, and obviously Alper's been there in the entire country. Nevada could be a team that nobody's talking about, but in that Mountain West that nobody wants to play.
On Nevada, Jared Lucas, Bart briefly mentioned him, like he's a transfer from Oregon State. The dude makes big late game shots. That's what he does. You better lead Nevada by 8 or 10 going into the final.
He's coming.
It's a 1-score game. Jared Lucas is going to drive a dagger through your heart.
Talk about, guys, I want to get your thought here, Bart, first. Talk about coaching strategies. Obviously, You have to coach a little differently in this tournament. You can't let a team go on a 9, 10, 12-point run without burning a timeout. You call timeout sooner. Do you shorten your bench maybe down from 8 to 7, from 9 to 8? Or do you just say, this is what we do, we're going to keep doing what we do? How does the coaching strategy in this tournament change when it's a one-and-done situation?
There's different philosophies on that. I mean, I think it's how many dudes you got. You got 10, you got
Team
7,
like
you got
Auburn that's
6.
going to play 10 guys.
So he can play
9?
different.
What do you do?
It's according to how the game's going in that situation. Bucky McMillan the same way. Bucky McMillan's going to sub and tire you out and tire you out and tire you out. And everybody's going to play as hard as they can possibly play for 2 to 3 minutes, and then you're coming out. Except that's going to be a 3-man rotation with Bucky. And then you'll have these 2 guys who will always stay in the game, always stay in the game, always stay in the game, find them rest here, there. But a lot of it's to switch defenses. That's what people don't realize of what people are doing now is it's defensive offsets and substitutions a lot of times to where Chris Jans does that a lot. What's working? What's not? If you start out a game like Mississippi State did, just dominating Tennessee, you're not changing anything. You're going to continue moving in that first half as long as it's going. You got a 5-6 point lead. You're a good team holding the lead. But here's what you see. You see substitutions based on adjustments you want to make sometimes. All right, what I mean by that is you'll see Chris Jans or Bucky McMillan or Nate Oates or I'm trying to think of somebody else I've seen. Bill Self. They'll go zone, or definitely Buzz Williams. They'll go zone or 2-2-1 or something late in a first half, right? With a minute and a half, 2-3 minutes to go, just to see what the other team's going to do and how they're going to line up. And then they'll either come back with it once or twice and tweak. The thing that I'm seeing more than anything,
out of bounds plays, defenses out of
bounds, sideline out of bounds. Don't throw it in with the little guy here when it's in the corner. Just different things. But here's what I want people to really, really pay attention to in this tournament is just how many times this is so different than it used to be. How many times teams will switch defenses mid-possession. It'll be a zone, then it'll go to a switching man, then it can go to a trap. I mean, that's what I'm starting to see, the ability of guys to communicate. That's what all this switching man defense has done in basketball, this positionless basketball. It's allowed everyone to be able to play defense in different manners. And then there's just triggers now. It's not just mono defense all the time. That's one thing people need to watch.
Hey, Matt Zemek, talk about the epitome of these upsets, how these upsets develop when you got the little guy playing the big guy. 8 or 10 minute bad spurt or a great spurt of shooting in a 7-8 minute period, the lead goes from 1 point to 14. Just talk about how playing in these neutral site arenas, you don't have as much crowd support as you maybe would have. How does that play into these upsets brewing?
Well, like one thing to consider is that I believe both Auburn's going to Spokane.
Alabama, and UAB all in Spokane.
And okay, so like the other 2 fan bases are going to be rooting against that team late in the game. So it's a neutral game.
Great
but if
point.
you have other fan bases in that arena who want to see you lose, like it almost becomes a road game. So like that's one part of the dynamic. But the other part of the dynamic is, you have the media timeouts. They're longer. So
great point.
How you manage the rest and the energy
substitutions
of your team. It also gives you more time to think about, we're in deep trouble. How do you manage the emotions of those longer breaks in the game? Like you have more time to think about how much trouble you're in. And so it is such a unique cocktail, right? And if you get off to a good start as a higher seed, but then midway through the game, that underdog seed, makes a big 10-2 run, it can create kind of an avalanche effect where you think it's all crashing down upon you. So like, obviously you want to get off to a really good start, but sometimes we've seen games. I think the Virginia Furman upset, was an example of that Virginia was in good position, but as soon as Furman got that late momentum, it snowballed on Virginia. So just how you handle, a 10-2 run against you, really, in many ways, that marks, it separates the men from the boys at this tournament. That can you handle a 5-minute run of adversity? And can you have that short memory that you need to have as an athlete, that, okay, a run happened, the other team punched back, you have to
Play the
mentally
next play.
clear the
Yep.
deck, and
Play
you
the
just
next
have to
play.
play the next play. Teams that are able to do that, those are the teams that steady themselves, tough it out, advance, and then in their next game, then they play on knockout 40 minutes and they really begin to develop a steamroller. But if you can't handle 5-6 bad minutes in this neutral court setting, that's how you get sent packing.
Bart, talk about the mentality. You played in this tournament at the highest level in the Final Four. You were what seed were you guys?
5.
So talk about the pressure of being a high seed, a 1 or a 2, versus a 5 or a 6, which is not a lot of pressure, versus a 12, 13, no pressure. Talk about the anxiety that you feel, whether you're the star player on the team and you can't make a shot for the first 6, 7 minutes of the game, or the other side of the fact of, boy, we're a 12 or 13 seed, and boy, the first 6 minutes, we're making everything. Talk about some of the flows of anxiety and pressure that builds in those huddles.
Well, Powers, you just talked me into answer talking about myself a little bit. So I have that exact answer perfectly. So when you're a 5 seed or 4 seed or 3 seed,
you're supposed to win that first game. You're supposed to win that first game.
Yeah. So like the 12 and 13s have no, nowadays, because there's been so many happen, you might be that 12 everybody's talked about to where you feel like I think there's a reverse effect now on those 12 seeds that everybody picks to win. I think that makes the 4 and 5 seeds mad. But it goes up levels, right? So that first game we played was against Sonny Smith and VCU in Indianapolis. It was actually in the same setting and same place where Princeton back cut UCLA. And UCLA had beaten us the year before, which was kind of crazy. But they were there, and so we ended up beating Princeton. But that first game, 12-5, we'd won the SEC tournament. It was an early game in the morning. And VCU came out and punched us in the mouth. And I was only playing like 12 minutes a game. And so it's one of those things. There were 3 or 4 times in the season that, like, my team was going to need me to score. My team was going to need a spark. It didn't happen, probably like that, but maybe 3 or 4 times to where my team really needed me to like do something and make a couple of shots. And it happened. I mean, we were down 8, and I came in the game with like 12 minutes to go, and bam, bam, 2 threes, and then some just crazy play where the ball bounced to me, and I made just threw it up because I was scared to death, and the ball went in, scared to get it blocked. And so those bench guys, who's that guy? I just remember being at halftime, Coach Williams being like, I mean, guys, is Bart the only one that can score? And I was just sitting there like, what is going on? I mean, like, I'm just in the game not to turn it over and throw it to Dan Pierre. What's wrong with y'all? But in the second half, it gets going, it gets going, it gets going. How coaches ease their teams out of the nervousness and into the game. I don't think the 1 or 2 seed matters a bit. I've never thought there was a difference in that at all, unless it's geographic and you're staying in the same region where your fan base can come. That's kind of, to me, those two are kind of irrelevant. Now when it gets started up in the 3s, 4s, as you go on, the seeding doesn't matter. Everybody's good. It's just the first couple of rounds to where I think the seeding, the mindset of being an underdog or not. But for us, it was, we had a bench of 8 guys, right? And if these 2 weren't doing well, this guy might get his opportunity. This guy, it's all in those little groupings. Used to be. Now it's not. It's everybody's wide open. Guys like a Baker Mazzara from Auburn could become just a star in this tournament because of all the different things he does. The energy. The guys who bring energy, like Zemek was talking about, those droughts when you're missing shots, right? When you can't score, nobody's making a big shot. Who are those guys who can make those loose ball energy plays, extra rebound 50-50 plays? I think those guys in those certain games for the teams that you see early in the game not playing well, the guys that come off the bench, I just guess I have a soft heart or soft place in my heart for guys like that. But that experience is, and the bottom line is, you always got to be ready for your opportunity. And that is not easy to do. But when that coach calls on you, it's not just him calling on you, it's your teammates, it's a fan base. And you have to deliver. And it's cool when you watch kids do that.
Bart, let me throw you a quick question. We talk about the first game and the second game. The first game, you have the long turnaround, several days. And then the second game, you just have 48 hours to prepare. Talk about that process and how you went through it and which coaches really do it well at the NCAA tournament.
Such a great point. I remember the first time, college basketball is just different than high school. And, you play 3-game tournaments here, there, back to back to back in high school, a couple of games a day, you can do all that. You're not used to playing back to back or even one day and then the next day in the SEC. It's like 3-4 days. So your body has a change. And the SEC is as physical. It's the most physical league. I mean, it's just the most athletic, physical league. It's not, maybe not the best basketball league, but you come out of those games hurting. And I remember in Indianapolis, I could barely get out of bed. And you're just thinking about getting to treatment. That the next day, the way coaches handle, all right, we've got to get this scouting report in, right? We've got to get this scouting report in. We've got to watch film. We got to get treatment. We got to shoot around and just get the guys back loose. You can't overdo it, Matt. That's the big thing. You can't overdo it at this point of the year, trying to go over too much, put too much in. Powers was talking about earlier. You got to have it honed down into, this is what we do. If we do this and this and this, it won't matter. They will not be able to do this. Okay, if they do this, then we're going to have this in our bag offensively, and we're going to have this in our bag defensively. Okay, and I may bring them out now, or I may keep them in my bag till next week. But the health now, this is the difference. And I think this is to your point, Matt. The coaches, John Calipari, absolute genius at it. Bruce Pearl, absolute genius at it. Bill Self. The time and money that their schools have put into the training staff to heal these guys' bodies in the technology that's come along with like the game ready stuff that you can just flow water, like just, rehab quickly in days. Ours was ice and stem, Powers, right?
Yeah.
That was it. It was ice and stem, baby. And that was it. So yeah, I think adjustments are big, but I think health is a big deal. And some of those coaches who handle that the best, their teams are typically always. And Izzo's another one with that.
Well, guys, great insight. I know we're going to have a great start to this tournament Thursday, Friday. I know you guys are going to be all over it. You can find Matt Zemek on Twitter X at Matt Zemek, Zemek, TrojansWire.com, part of the USA Today family. I know he's going to be covering Juju Watkins very well out there at the the one-seeded women out there in Cali for USC. So I know Juju's going to be a very interesting player to watch as they move forward. And Bart Hyche, you can find Bart at Hyche, HYCHE 22 on Twitter, Hyche 22, HycheHoops.com. Does a lot of great work with a lot of kids all over the Southeast, coaching them up. Great insight, fellas. I really appreciate the time. Enjoy the tournament, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.